Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Dave Albert. In this show, I talk about technology, building a company as a CTO and co-founder, and have guests to discuss their roles in technology and entrepreneurship. Today, I'm joined by Dave Denham, a Scrum Master and Agile coach at Workday, who is also a former colleague and current friend of mine. He's also one of the original organizers of the Agile Lean Ireland conference. Thank you so much for joining me, Dave.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Dave. Always a pleasure to meet up.
Yeah,
looking forward to the chat.
Definitely. Maybe to begin, give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, a little bit of my background. I work as a Scrum Master and a coach here in Workday. I've been working as a kind of Scrum Master in that area for about 5 years now or so. Kind of came an unusual route to that. I was pretty much in UX for 7 or 8 years before that. So pretty much like what I studied in college. I actually had 2 startups. So my first one in college was pretty much like a web solutions provider with my cousin, which we ran out of his attic.
I do not remember that.
Yeah,
I don't know if we ever talked about that.
No, I don't think we have. No. So we ran that for about 2 years or so, and then we realized it doesn't really, pay the rent and stuff. It was nice for pocket money and stuff like that. But that was great because I suppose, it wasn't just, you're a designer or a developer. You're also the salesman for the company and, you're the support agent for the company and all that sort of stuff. So that was really interesting. Probably not too publicized, but Acid Web Solutions was the name of our company. And then I suppose, kind of moved into, worked in Symantec for a number of years with yourself, for 9.5 years in various different roles. I was a UX lead there, so managed a team there for a few years and, front-end development as well. Also with an ex-colleague of mine, we set up another startup. So that ran for about a year or so doing a similar thing, kind of web solutions at the time. So I suppose those were the days when you couldn't just, wizard up a website, you needed someone to design it. Like you couldn't just use a WordPress or Wix or whatever they use now. So again, lots of kind of learnings from there. And, I've been working in Workday for the last 2.5 years or so, just kind of coaching teams and product owners and leaders as well. So, really kind of caught the Agile bug probably about 5 years ago. Involved with some of my co-founders in the Agile in Ireland community as well. So, running meetups, lots of them here in Workday, and various other places around Dublin. Looking forward to our 3rd conference now this year as well. So, so kind of, I'd say it's more of an accidental path, to be honest, into Agile. Kind of arrived here by accident. So I can tell you more about that if you want.
Yeah, definitely. If you're in Western Europe, you should come to the conference. It's fantastic. I've been every year so far. I plan to go this year. I unfortunately don't have my ticket yet.
Funny you knew someone. Yeah, I appreciate that.
So definitely get your tickets. Go. Yeah. It's fantastic. You will learn a lot.
I think as well, I think just maybe to mention, I know you were kind of an encouragement for this as well. So I think in the spirit of kind of experimenting, which I think is kind of part of the spirit of this podcast as well.
Yes.
And learning. So, definitely appreciative of the nudges, I suppose, the nice nudges.
It was all selfish.
It was all selfish.
I wanted to go to it.
You just wanted a free ticket, man.
I needed you to make it happen and occasionally give discounts.
It works. Yeah, it works. Yeah. So, that's cool, man.
Yeah, you were saying there's more to that story there?
I suppose, I suppose, I was working as a team lead for a number of years, kind of with UX teams and, I suppose small teams in Symantec at the time. I think I'd seen various incarnations of Agile, and I kind of had a negative perception of it because I kind of seen it when it wasn't done well. And to be honest, I think it was just encouragement from leaders who maybe had seen what's the vision of Agile done well, and encouraging, at the time they encouraged me to go to a conference an Agile conference in Paris. A few of us to go over and just get a feel of what other companies were doing. So we saw people like, you know, Henrik Nieberg was working with Spotify at the time, and I think we heard stories around like kind of Netflix culture and stuff like that. I think that was the thing that kind of bit me at the time. It was really Agile as a culture. You know, rather than, I suppose, the meeting filled, ceremony laden thing that I'd kind of seen before. I'd kind of seen how it, you know, some of the problems I saw with my own teams around, you know, how does motivation, intrinsic motivation, tie into like how people work together and cross-functionally and deliver product. And I think my background has always been focused on product, like since like, you know, being part of a couple of startups, being kind of on the UX side, empathizing with users, empathizing with customers. So it hasn't really been maybe a more traditional project manager route, which is maybe where a lot of Scrum Masters or coaches come from, or developers or development managers and things like that. So it's always kind of been on the UX and product side. So I think it's probably given me probably an interesting perspective on maybe how Agile helps people build better products when it's done well. So, like I think, like I said, I kind of arrived at that conclusion a little bit by accident, just by, I suppose, hearing stories. And I think at the time it was kind of like, that makes total sense. I mean, I like kind of the values that people are talking about here, and the Dan Pink Drive book, and a lot of the things that really like. Agile, I think it's really just kind of a value system that kind of leads towards kind of a more, I suppose, human, evidence-based way of working. And that really kind of aligned with like how I was trying to, I suppose, lead teams at the time, to build better products, and like even just like how UX fits into Agile. Like I think I always see challenges with that, but like I could actually see how Agile could actually help with that, and even just things like Lean as well. Like there's an extended breadth of knowledge around Lean, and of course Lean startup later on, and I kind of see they all kind of fit into that same picture of quick feedback loops, direct contact with customers, connecting teams with users and stuff like that. Like I kind of just see they all kind of connect to those patterns. So kind of a not the traditional route, but definitely as soon as I understood like what it kind of stood for, I kind of wanted to move in that direction. So that happened fairly soon, I think, after that. So
cool. And so the Dan Pink, the book is Drive, and the core principle is that there are three. What is it? Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Yeah,
exactly. So I think, I mean, I think just it's very simple, I suppose, codification maybe of intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic, which is maybe the more kind of carrot and stick approach. But I think like in that book, I know he makes a couple of really good points around, people, I suppose the management assumption traditionally has been, pay people more, and give them incentives and rewards, and they'll be more motivated. Where I think he really turns it on its head and says, like, take money off the table, like pay them fairly, pay them, the market rate or maybe just above the market rate, and take that away. Because I suppose intrinsically what people really care about is autonomy. So, the kind of need to be able to kind of control their own destiny and how they work. Mastery in terms of, I suppose, that they're continuously learning and actually becoming a master at like what they do. So like I see this every day, working here at Workday with developers who, set up sharpening the saw sessions or hackathon sessions or book clubs or things like that. And this is something they do in their free time, or they go to meetups. There's a meetup on here tonight. People are not forced to do these things. People want to learn. He talked a lot about the open source movement and things like that. Like why do people do this for free in their free time? So that's an interesting one. And purpose, of course, like, and I think that kind of ties back to the likes of Simon Sinek's work around, start with why, so, why are we doing this? So like in Agile terms, it might be, what's the vision for the product? What's the product vision? Does everyone understand that? Because, I often find with teams, they're so disconnected from maybe the end user, that they don't even understand like why they're doing this, So just generally connecting teams to the purpose of their work, every day, and like to the purpose of like what needs they're trying to solve for users.
Which doesn't always have to be 100% altruistic. So when I first heard of it, one of the first things I thought was save the world.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have to be that.
Exactly. I mean, that's the example they gave. And I think they gave some examples of organizations like even like Tesla and things like, and Apple, and they give, very, very high level visions. But it might be just, you're working on a healthcare app or something, and people are able to get their prescriptions earlier or something like that. Or if you're working on a HR app, you're changing people's life in some way, even if it's just a small way that, like one of the things we actually do a lot of here in Workday, we have a user testing lab. So we try to get the teams down to see users come in. The whole get out of the building thing. Like I know I think you talked to my friend Rob a little bit about that recently, but it's so true, because there's nothing more interesting when developers actually see, first of all, a user say, oh, I don't get that actually. And just click the button, the team are saying in the room, and they don't see it or they don't get it. But also on the flip side, like when they see something that they've created actually be useful and actually solve a need. So it could just be logging PTO or creating expenses really quickly or things like that, or even things like the Intuit TurboTax, something like that. So things like that only really come from direct contact with real users. And that ties back to the purpose of actually trying to help people. It doesn't have to be save the world, but it could just be, I can, I can do my taxes really easily now because of what you did. So yeah, and I think like things I'd seen even before getting into Agile, like we'd done hackathons and things like that, and we didn't call any of that Agile. They were just things we tried out. So like you could say we were working in an Agile way without knowing what that was. But like in terms of autonomy, mastery, purpose, you think of a hackathon or something like that, that's full of that, right? Like, people are working through the night. They don't have to. They're working on something cool or something different that they think is going to change things. And there's a purpose about it. So, I think like that was one of the books I think that definitely, I'd always recommend to people.
Oh,
I
definitely.
think Drive is really good.
And if you're not into books, at least watch the YouTube video.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it should at least whet your appetite.
Yeah.
My only problem with the book was I was already sold on the idea, and the first act, if you will, of the book was trying to sell you on the idea, and it was like, come on, go faster.
Exactly. Well, I know you watch at 1.5 speed, Dave, on your videos. So.
Double speed. Everything's double speed.
Everything is double speed.
Which I encourage listeners, if you're listening to this, listen on as fast a speed as you can manage.
Yeah. Until we sound like chipmunks, basically. Yeah. So, but yeah, I suppose like that's a video I usually share with leaders, like when I'm starting with teams as well, because it just gives them a bit of an understanding about, I suppose just intrinsic motivation. I think it's really important. So
absolutely,
yeah.
So, what are your typical interactions with your team here at Workday like?
Yeah. I think the thing, so like I'm working with a couple of teams at the moment, and I suppose, without going into details, like basically I'm kind of like new initiatives that haven't been around so far. I think one of the things that like I've seen work, and I think we try to do every day, is try to get a bit of a startup feel within the team. We're working in a large enterprise now. Workday is not a startup. 5 years ago, it might have been a startup, but it's grown like crazy at the moment. But I think one of the things that always kind of encourages is to try to keep the startup feel, try to keep the culture, which I think is really important. But that's kind of what I see frameworks and lightweight frameworks like Scrum or Kanban or things like that try to do, is to try and create like mini startups. Like when I see them done well, try to create mini startups within enterprises. Like that's when they are done well, and when you're taking in like regular customer feedback and things like that, and when teams are kind of get out of the just another meeting or things like that, when it actually doesn't feel like, it shouldn't feel like meetings to the teams. It should just feel like these are events that happen during the week to help us achieve whatever goal it is we're trying to do. So like, I think a lot of the work I try to do with the teams is more around that at the moment. Like I think one of the things I've learned is really focus more on outcome based roadmaps. Like that's one thing. So, you know, focus a lot of time on your product vision. But like, I think one of the things I've definitely been working on more with product managers in the last few months has been around the roadmaps. Because what I find is their roadmaps are very influential about how the team works, the goals that they have and things like that. So a typical product roadmap, and I think I'll kind of reference John Cutler, who's someone I follow a lot, a product management guru. I follow a lot on Twitter. You know, don't Gantt chart your product roadmap, and that's kind of what I see a lot of product roadmaps being, is literally a list of features laid out like a Gantt chart over, and with like timelines, like literally months or weeks even against them.
And usually they're inaccurate.
And usually, most of the time, they're inaccurate.
I've yet to see one that was accurate.
Yeah, maybe for the next 3 months, they're reasonably accurate. But beyond that, so really, I think that's one thing. I think you kind of have to start at a higher level, there to, like, in terms of, you know, before even working with teams, you know, on the product side of things, talking more about outcomes and what problems you want to solve. So like the things that should go onto your roadmap should be more problems we want to solve for users. And that's what we should promise our customers. You know, it should be more, in the next quarter, we're going to solve these problems for our users, and not we're going to deliver these features for our users. Because at the end of the day, our customers just want their problem solved. And what I often see with product roadmaps is I see list of features. It becomes a feature factory, right? List of features go onto roadmaps for months and months and months. Teams under insane pressure to crank out features that they don't really know what the outcome is giving in terms of business value or customer value. Whereas if you start with problems or you start with outcomes, the features should kind of plug into that, and the team should really be a major part of plugging features into the outcomes that kind of come from the business. So that's something that I've been working a bit with product managers on, is really to try to think more in terms of outcomes rather than outputs. Yes. Particularly for the product roadmaps. Right. And then I suppose just day-to-day coaching teams. So a lot of the teams I work with are typically we start with Scrum, and they kind of evolve into Kanban teams. That's usually what I find, is they get more mature and kind of more lean, I suppose. So it could typically be, you know, between training new teams or coaching new teams, to maybe more mature teams becoming more self-sufficient, and, you know, kind of coaching them at a different level maybe. So, and then I suppose, kind of, you know, helping leaders as well, you know, maybe who have agile teams, just to maybe understand, just, you know, how to work with them and how to help them more or less, you know. So that's kind of what I see. I think kind of, you know, you start as a Scrum Master, maybe like you start just working with teams, but I think things like roadmaps and how leadership sets up the system or the environment around the team becomes a lot more apparent as to how that actually influences how the team works. So like I give the example, you know, we're working on a roadmap at the moment where, you know, the team is setting sprint goals for some sprints, and it's, you know, we're trying to come up with goals, and if the roadmap is a list of features, it's like, what's our sprint goal? Oh, we delivered this feature, and this feature, and our goal is just deliver all the features. Whereas if the higher level outcome is we're trying to reduce the length of time it takes to complete a task, you know, on the roadmap, then, you know, coming up with more kind of granular goals for their sprints, then that's a little bit more outcome based. So, okay. So kind of, yeah.
I really like that, because I actually have seen that within our own team. So our team is a good functioning team. Yeah. But we're not great. I am not great at road mapping.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's one of the biggest stresses within our team. And our roadmap basically looks like a list of features.
Right.
At one point, we went off and kind of did an experiment on making sure that users could get into the get a better feel for the application before they were forced to sign up. So
Yeah.
a demo account.
Yeah.
That was a specific outcome.
Yeah.
And like the team always pulls together well,
Yeah.
but there was something special about that few days
Yeah.
of what we were able to deliver really quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's more based on the specific outcome
Yeah.
rather than just another feature. I mean, all of our
Yeah.
features are important,
Yeah.
but still,
Yeah.
a list of features is different than an outcome that can
Yeah.
be done with,
Yeah.
the question was, how might we solve this problem
Right.
as quick as possible?
Yeah.
And the outcome was good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we can figure out how to reframe some of the elements, which may give lead way to more creativity
Yeah.
in the solution,
Yeah.
that may surface possibilities that weren't, we didn't think about them 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so they don't happen because we're so focused on delivering what we've decided we were going to deliver.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're not far off.
Yeah.
We are pretty good at trying to reevaluate things, but still, people are people.
Yeah.
If you've got a list of things to tick off on your
Right.
list,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to try to tick off all the things.
Totally. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a challenge. Like, I've worked with like some product managers that get it. Like, I think I was talking to one recently and he was like, of course that makes sense. It's kind of like, it just kind of sounds like common sense. Like we're focusing on outcomes, right? And then others who are maybe more traditional. So I think it's definitely a mindset shift to do that. I think probably the challenge there is just around like measuring, because I suppose traditionally, like with maybe waterfall projects, we focused on measuring outputs, right? So it's easy to measure, did we deliver this or not, right? So, so you're kind of flipping things a little bit because you're saying we're not really, you're also flipping the reward system because you're saying you're not actually rewarding people or teams maybe based on how predictably sometimes or how much they can deliver, but actually what's really the value they can deliver, what's the impact they can deliver. So, and that's harder to measure. So, and that's why I think it goes back to, when you do the roadmaps, I suppose like one of the things we're trying to do at the moment is not just talk about the outcomes or the objectives, but the key results as well. So, the OKR framework, objectives and key results.
Yes.
It's just a nice way to because I think it's all well and good having lots of outcomes there and lots of kind of lofty, we want to increase customer retention by 13% over the next quarter. And they should be time boxed as well, right? So there should be some sort of when can we check in on that? But there also should be some sort of key results metric. I've heard it called like hypothesis driven development, OKRs. It's kind of all the same idea. I just kind of see it's the same idea where you're making some sort of like more scientific type prediction. Yeah. So I think that's, and I think it takes a while to get there as well. Like, because sometimes you just have to deliver something. Like we're working, some of the products we've been working on. Sometimes like the MVP is just like get something working. It's just prove it out and get something working. So maybe that's just the goal. Like it works end to end, and I find like we use things like story. I don't know if you come across like story mapping, user story mapping, things like that.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I don't know if the audience has. Maybe give a little bit of a.
Yeah. So user story. It's one of those other patterns. So Jeff Patton, who's a product management guy, he wrote a book called User Story Mapping, and it's a way basically to slice. More or less slice your backlog, or slice an initiative maybe into kind of vertical slices. So really it's a good way to slice, for example, an MVP. So let's say you're coming up with a new feature, like a new large feature, something like that. To map out, it kind of really starts from like what's the customer journey, or what's the projected customer journey that this new feature is going to take, and then to kind of map out basically user stories, which would typically go into like an Agile team's backlog. But it really kind of forces the point on kind of thinking iteratively versus, just delivering a list of features basically. Thinking about like, what is your MVP? what do we want to learn here? Could we just deliver like a basic slice of this? So again, it's just one of those other kind of tactics I find, to kind of think about those outcomes, like what's the MVP, what do we want to learn, and I think it's a nice way for teams to frame what they're going to work on, because I think it gives them a little bit more, it gives them a lot more input into what the solution is going to be, I would say, and kind of the freedom to experiment, which I think is really important. I think that's one of the things. Like I know Google ran a survey, I think, on like, what makes, I think they surveyed like 1,000 teams or something like that in Google, and they distilled like the top 10 characteristics of like what are the highest performing teams, and like technical excellence wasn't even in the top 10. So I think like psychological safety was like, I think double whatever the second place item was. But I think that like that speaks a lot to very much to startups as well, but kind of safety to fail. I think it's the same thing in enterprises where we're trying to create like mini startups within the enterprise to innovate. That kind of culture where it's like safe to fail and safe to try things. I think that like that all ties together with like, aiming for outcomes. Because if you think about it, if you're aiming for an outcome of, task completion, we want to reduce it by 13% or whatever, and the team get to 6% after, 4 sprints, they have the safety to say, actually, no, we didn't achieve that, but we got some way. And then, should we ship it or not? So there's some safety there to try some things. And even if they don't get it, then they kind of have the permission maybe to try something else, or say, actually, no, this didn't work. So I think that's important.
Yeah. Just processing. Yeah, I mean, and some of the things that you can even do with the testing, maybe some subset of your customers or users might be very, very conservative.
Yeah, right.
But trying to find those not so conservative users to then allow early testing of not quite polished, not quite complete features that they care more about solving the problem than they care about, does it do 100% of the things I need? Right,
exactly.
So we could do a better job of trying to do that ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's a good piece of advice there to consider, so that you can get that testing and validate.
Yeah.
If you're early adopters who claim to have this problem, still don't want to use it, and they're not clamoring for more features on it, perhaps it's time to rethink whether it should be built at all in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know in previous places where we've done things like A/B testing and things like that, I think before, we started using, I think we were using Adobe Target at the time, but before Adobe Target came along, we had the capability to do that. Like I remember sitting in meetings where be arguing over button colors, or and this no decision would ever be made, like in terms of because there's no data to back things up. So I think things like A/B testing, like that's a great way, like talk about like safety to fail, like target to like 5% of your users, and roll it back really quickly if it doesn't work. And I think like there are some of the best experiences I've had with teams before, where they actually have access to do A/B testing, or I've worked with one team before where we had access to like data scientists. Like they weren't embedded on the team, but they were great, because it was kind of they could really use really read the data and kind of help the PO like make really smart decisions. So I think it's like that's just one thing I see. There's not enough data being used. There's not enough investment being put into analytics and using data with a lot of features and roadmaps that I see a lot of companies having. So use data.
That reminds me of the book Thinking Fast and Slow.
Okay.
Just that there's the part of our brain that has to protect us from being eaten by lions and tigers. And so that's part of why we rely on gut instinct so often.
Yeah.
Which is all those ongoing meetings that don't come out with any real result are. It feels like that's going to work.
Yeah.
Which we've all been guilty of.
100%. Like, and I've fallen victim to that many a times. Like, I think one of the things actually I've started facilitating recently has been design sprints. So I don't know if you're familiar with design sprints, or have you used them? Or
I am very interested in using them.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder for our team at the moment.
Yeah.
But as we're actually going to try to do a mini design sprint sort of thing over. We're having some of our team who are in India come over in 2 weeks, and we're taking one feature or one piece of a problem, and we're trying to solve it within the week.
Brilliant.
That's not the full purpose of the week. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but that's why we're going to try to limit it to something very small and try to solve it.
Great.
Don't know that we'll do the full design sprint where you do a prototype and then put the prototype in.
And day 5.
So it's more going to be, our prototype will be in production. We'll monitor what happens through our analytics. And then decide. We don't need to put it in the hands of people who may or may not want to use our stuff in the future. We'll put it in the hands of people who are using our stuff now. And if there's a negative result, then we'll rethink it, remove it.
That's 3 days you might spend on it, like, compared to building something fully. And like, I think, like, I suppose it's a discovery I've made recently, just around, like, design sprints in general. And I think it's probably been a little bit of a marriage of like my previous backgrounds a little bit as well. But just in terms of, I just find them a great way. And I think, like, one of the things when I ran one last year was, typically the design process would be the realm of, like, maybe UX designers and product managers. The first one we ran, we had developers, testers, we had leadership in there. And within day 2, they were all sketching solutions. 9:30 on day 2, and I said, like, today we're going to do a day of sketching. There was a lot of fear, I think, in everyone's eyes. But really, I suppose it's a great way to, I think it has this kind of mantra of together alone. Like, so to, cause it's basically, it's a quick way to do design thinking. So that, you're empathizing with users and you're talking to experts and things like that. And for teams, this is a great way to connect to that purpose as well, right? So go back to purpose, to connect to, like, what is the big challenge we're trying to solve with this brand new product or brand new feature? What are the needs? And, like, I think you mentioned the how might we framework, but I find I use this a lot now, because really it's about reframing problems as opportunities. I use this in retrospectives now. I use this all over the place. I use this at home with my wife, like, how might we get the kids to bed sooner tonight? How might we get the chicken cooked quicker tonight? so everything becomes an opportunity suddenly. And I think it's a nice way to think. But, like, we found it hugely impactful, like, and it's led to a product which was showcased at one of our workday events, but it really came from a small group of cross-functional people who would never have gotten together otherwise to do something. And at the end of the week they had something tangible, because I think that's something the criticism I've always had with design thinking is oftentimes there's not something tangible that actually comes out of it. That I get the diverging and converging and empathizing with users and things like that, but I find the cycle time to actually get feedback is really, really long. So when we did it, like, just from a lean perspective, it's kind of like, right, well, our cycle time used to be 6 months to discover, like, what the right thing to build is, through prioritization meetings and handoffs and things like that, to our discovery cycle time is 5 days now, basically, to learn, is this the right thing or is this the wrong thing? No, it doesn't give you all the answers. And it still has to be implemented. And I think you still, like, where I think it falls short is you don't get the quantitative data from it. So I think you kind of have to tie in, once you launch it, I find you have to tie in some lean startup metrics as well. I think we talked about pirate metrics,
Yeah.
you know, our so I find it's very good for getting qualitative, real user feedback really, really quickly, getting the team invested in why. Very, very good for that. You know, getting something into customers' hands. It could just be a paper prototype, right? Or it could just be, you know, an InVision screen or something like that. But you're learning really, really fast as to, are we going in the right direction here or not? And you're getting something tangible out of it. And that's like one of the brilliant things like we've seen. And, you know, one of the team was like, found something on our desk and it's like, oh, here's the sketch I drew. And it's like, oh, that looks exactly like the product we have now, you know. And this was from a developer. This wasn't from a designer, you know. So I thought it was really interesting, you know. So, because really, I mean, some of the ideas the developers had, and I think that the format is nice as well because it's kind of anonymous until the very end as well. So it's really the strength of the ideas that comes through. Yeah. And, you know, we found it was the developers actually that had some of the best ideas as well. So yeah, design sprints again, just, you know, how to connect, you know, teams to end users and get really fast feedback based off, you know, actual user interviews and things like that. That's been a revelation for me in the last year or so, I'd say, using design sprints. And I hope it catches on more because I think it's also a nice way to integrate UX design into, you know, Agile and Lean and things like that. Because ultimately, I think design thinking and Agile has very similar purposes of kind of connecting with users and fast feedback loops and things like that. So design sprints is kind of a nice manifestation of that, I find.
Cool. So, I mean, you mentioned retrospectives earlier and,
and
kind of the spirit of retrospectives.
Right.
You've told us a bit about what's worked well, what you're finding that does good for you.
Yeah.
What's not worked well for you in the past?
Oh, okay.
And obviously, depending on the team, any specific thing may or may not work well. But kind of in general, what you thought might work.
Okay.
But, you know, just now you would never try again. You would be very hesitant to try again.
Yeah, like I think probably a couple of things there. Like I know one of the first teams I worked with, I think I'd just come back fresh from seeing how Spotify did Agile. I was like, let's install that here.
Yeah.
Let's use like Kanban and let's use like they were using Lean Startup and things like that. And I think I tried to introduce that. Probably mandated this actually to a team I was working with at the time, and it really flopped. Like it really didn't work well because ultimately, if you think about companies like Spotify, you know, they've honed these things and developed the mindset around these things for years. You know, so and you know, so I think that's a trap. Like I think a lot of Scrum masters or, you know, Agile coaches who are just starting off fall into.
I just got my driving license. I think I'll go drive Formula One. Yeah,
right. Should be fine. What could go wrong? Exactly. So like install something that you see worked well somewhere else and it doesn't work, right? So I mean, ultimately you're dealing with people and you're trying to change how people work or people's mindsets and things like that. So that doesn't work. So like, don't mandate anything. Don't try to install processes or things like that. You know, it just doesn't work. So I think that was a learning I had. I think just, the other one is kind of around the importance of kind of, I suppose, engaging with leadership as well. And that's something I've kind of only learned over time. You know, the importance of kind of leadership in Agile transformations or Lean transformations or, because I think a lot of the time with things like Scrum, so Scrum doesn't have a role for like a manager on the team and things like that. And sometimes I see it taken to this extreme where they're saying, I'll get rid of all the managers, you know, we don't need no stinking managers type of thing. But, you know, I think there's, you know, it's probably a little bit kind of cheesy at this stage, you know, difference between leaders and managers. But really, I think it's just a different type of leadership that's needed. You know, for managers to manage the system around the teams and encourage things like autonomy and mastery and purpose and give them more autonomy, but help develop their competency as well. So, you know, that would increase the amount of autonomy that they can give them. So I think like bringing leaders along on the journey of, you know, whatever you're trying to change or transform, even if it's just with one team, bringing them in on that. Like I think I did a Kanban training session last year, and like I've seen sessions where managers aren't at the team training sessions, but we said to the managers to come along, and we did an exercise called Get Kanban, which is it's like a 3-hour simulation as to how flow goes through it. It's kind of like an organizational system, and you get different scenarios about like blockers that come up and how to deal with them and what happens. And, you know, I think there's one part of the simulation where there's a manager called Carlos, and he insists that all the QAs must do all the testing, and they must stay late, and they must all have 10 things in progress each and things like that. So it comes up with all these policies around how QA should work and things like that. And of course, like the simulation shows how that causes a bottleneck, and the team aren't able to flow, and no value is delivered and things like that. But I just thought it was interesting because we had some managers in there, and they were like, "Yeah, fire Carlos," because Carlos gets fired in the game, right? So the managers were like really on board with, like, you know, this is an impediment to flow and stuff like that. And I just thought that was interesting because one or two of them were a bit skeptical about this thing beforehand, and they got really invested in it, and they kind of understood, you know, the theory of constraints and whip limits and things like that just by actually experiencing it with the teams, you know. So when the teams went back and actually tried to do it for real, the leaders are actually bought in, and you know, so some of them were like, you know, they were still talking about the game to me like a couple of weeks later, and they were excited that they had their teams had their Kanban board set up and things like that. So so I think there's an element of, like, I think you have to bring leaders on the journey, and like I think ultimately to get to the stage where leaders are looking at what are the bigger problems in the organization, and try to unblock the bigger impediments to flow, to value flow in organizations. So, and I think that's a journey for them as well. But I think if you exclude them, then I think you're just going to meet a lot of resistance, and you're probably going to fail.
Back to what you were saying about implementing and mandating massive changes. You know, just small, consistent changes over time add up to so much more than trying to force some big bang change onto people.
Absolutely.
You know, you're gonna get you're much more likely to get buy-in. And accepting the feedback of what works, what doesn't work.
100%. Like I did an Agile coaching course last year with Lisa Atkins. So she wrote a book called Agile, Coaching Agile Teams. So she's the master as far as I'm concerned. She's one of my heroes. They say don't meet your heroes, but do meet your heroes. She was awesome.
Well, Rob was telling us a story about when he met his.
He broke her hand.
He broke her hand. Yeah. So go listen to the Rob Healy episode if you don't know what I'm talking about.
I didn't break Lisa's hand. I might have shook it very firmly, but but like I think like she kind of gave some pearls of wisdom. Like one of the things she said was honor the present. So like if you're dealing with if you're a change agent, right? So you're an Agile coach, or you're a Scrum master, or you're an agent of change. So you're trying to cause change more or less. But like one way to cause change is to actually like respect, I suppose, people's current roles. And you know, things obviously work to some degree in the past. Otherwise, the company probably wouldn't still be around, right? You know, so it's really just to meet people where they are. Like I think that was the thing. One of the things she kind of taught us, and it's kind of stuck with me a bit. It's just to kind of meet people where they are, you know, try to empathize with them, and just try to bring them along on the journey, and kind of, you know, see what's in it for them as well. So so yeah, like I think change management. I know there's lots and lots of theories and stuff out there, but I see kind of that coming up a lot. Like I'm a big fan of the Kanban method as well. So I suppose like people look at Kanban and say, oh, Kanban boards and, you know, it's flow and things like that. But really, like big part of the Kanban method is actually it's a change method. So it's a way. The first principle of the Kanban method is respect people's current roles and responsibilities, and you know, don't try to, you know, I might be shot for this, but like don't try to convert project managers into certified Scrum Masters in 2 days and expect them to be, you know, completely changed. So it's really to try and respect where people are at the moment, and like I think one of the other things I suppose Kanban says is to try and encourage leadership at all levels as well. So I think that's what leaders should be, or like modern leaders should be doing, is like with their teams, is to encourage acts of leadership on their team as well. So I think Lisa Atkins definitely a hero of mine, and learned a lot from her.
Nice. So, most of your perspective is in larger organizations, but I want to make sure that people know that these are valid observations and tips for startups. So you're constantly in a state of change, but you have to try to help the team guide that change in the right direction.
Right.
It's always changing.
Yeah. Right.
Whether it's for good or bad, depends on the direction given by all members of the team, which starts with the leadership. So that's one of the even harder parts as the CTO in a small company. I am a de facto PO, Scrum Master, team member, right, and also the boss, right. So it's a very difficult thing to do well, and I can't say for sure that I do it well. I think I do a pretty good job of making sure to ensure the team is heard and try to act as a member of the team. Obviously, sometimes you still have to make a decision that the team may not like, so it's really hard to figure out how to have a self-directed team when a member of the team is the leader of the team.
It's right.
But that's how all startups are.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you have to remember that yourself as the leader. That you have to keep people on board. And I don't just mean on board of the company. I mean on board with the mission and the goals. Right. You have to make sure that they're heard and they feel that autonomy.
100%.
So even if you're nudge, don't push.
Right. Well, there'd be no alley with no nudging. So, like I think I kind of think of leaders as well as kind of like gardeners of the culture, almost like they're almost planting seeds for the culture to kind of grow, and encouraging other leaders to grow eventually, and things like that. So I think it's really kind of setting the tone and leading by example. In terms of like the culture, or the whole be the change you want to see, but like really kind of personifying that, so other people are going to I suppose behave their way to that culture. I think that's the Shuck model, right? Like people look at the behavior. You can behave your way to a certain culture, and I think leaders play a really key part in that. Whether they're in a startup or whether they're in a large company trying to do a transformation, they can act their way to that culture, or as Lisa Atkins says, fake it till you make it, basically, even if you're not there. Right? So it's it's really key. Like I think that just sets the tone for the culture, and I think once the culture is good, with the examples of Spotify and even here like Workday, once the culture is in place, I think it becomes a lot easier to innovate. So
excellent. And so a lot of what you've described, so like we were talking before we started, that the Agile Lean Ireland meetup and conference seems to be at the moment a little heavy on the business side and a little light on the developer side. And developers, and not just developers, operations, anybody who's ever Googled DevOps should go. Because it definitely impacts you. So just because you may not be the person who is air quotes in charge of an agile transformation, you're always going to learn things that will help your team work better. If your team works better, then your stress levels have to go down. So if conflicts are removed, if everything starts to flow better, your day gets better. So there's absolutely no reason not to go there. So again, if you're in Western Europe, you should come to the Ali conference, agileleanireland.ie.
Appreciate the plug.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And I mean, just maybe talk a little bit about how it is organizing a conference of that size, which now is a 2-day conference.
Yeah.
You know, it started from us talking in the cubicle.
Right. Yeah. About a meetup, actually. There was no conference. Yeah. Like, I think, like, I suppose that the spirit of Agile in Ireland is always, like I was saying, being experimental. So really to try things and see how it works. Like, it really went, I think myself and my friend Rob Healy really had the idea about 3 years ago, because I think at the time there wasn't really wasn't really much of an Agile community in Ireland at the time. You know, I think people were kind of talking about it. It seemed to be, you know, maybe starting to be used. Kind of see it like Agile is a bit of a late adopter here, you know, maybe compared to places like Scandinavia and some other parts of Europe. But I think it really started from an experiment of, you know, let's see if we can run a meetup. So you know, I think our friend Ronan, we begged him for his projector, and we got a screen. We begged the screen from someone as well, and we found a room in a pub. And I think we said if more than 10 people came, the experiment would be validated, our hypothesis would be validated. I think 37 people showed up that night, which was awesome.
Yeah. And I couldn't make that one. I had a team call that night.
Yeah, sure you did. So. I think for like our second one, then I think we said, right, let's see if we can, because at the time I think my other hero was Jeff Gothelf at the time. It's like let's see if we can get him. Like, let's see if we could do a Skype or something like that. And because at the time, like, no other meetups, as far as I could see, were doing like telepresence meetups, you know. So we did that, and we ran that as an experiment, and I think we got 70 people for that one.
I was at that one.
You were at that one, right?
At that one.
Yeah, I think our friends at Bank of Ireland hosted us for that one, and they started sponsoring us, and this has made our life much easier. We didn't have to beg for projectors anymore, which was great. And my friend Ronan was pretty happy. He could watch his movies at nighttime again. So yeah, it kind of just grew from there. Like, and it's kind of cool, like, as well, because we actually built relationships with like some of the people we really admired. Like, I talked about Henrik Nieberg. He was at our third meetup, I think, doing a Skype. And Jeff, and we met Jeff in Dublin as well soon beforehand, because I think he was doing training here. So it was kind of cool, like, because we kind of became friends a little bit with them as well. And of course we had local speakers, because that was really being the mantra. Like, I think we encouraged community speakers, and I think that's a really key part. If you go to pretty much any alley meetup, we had one there last week, and there was a community speaker. We had Melissa Perry, I think, doing the same format again, Skype, which we revert back to from time to time. And really, I suppose in the spirit of experimentation, then I think 2017 we decided to run a half-day Saturday morning conference, which we really just thought of as kind of like, again, what's the MVP? What's Meetup plus one, essentially? So, and they hosted us here in Workday. We were really fortunate. They were really supportive, and they gave us an awesome area. They gave us some rooms, and we got Woody Zool. So he got the came up with no estimates and mob programming and stuff like that. So some really, really interesting guy, John Terry as well from Lean Kiss, and some really, really great speakers from Ireland as well in the community. I think we had 150 people there, and we were just blown away by that. Like, I think
it was amazing.
That was always the thing. Probably you and I talked about, like, should we try that? And again, it was like, well, if we got 50 people there, that would be amazing. So we were blown away. And then earlier on this year, we had our second conference, and it was 525 people there in Croke Park. And we had Henrik, we had Jeff, we had all of
in person this time.
In person, we had all of our newly made hero friends there, and I fanboyed out. I'll be honest. I got you know, I was like, can I get my picture with you? Yeah, he was super cool though. Like, I think that's the thing around, you know, any speakers we're lucky enough to kind of be able to invite as well is, kind of the characters of the speakers as well. Like, I think, you know, we've been fairly firm about, you know, making sure that, I suppose, what we know of them and their values kind of align with like what we're trying to do as well. So, and I think that's the feedback, you know, because they interact with, you know, our audience, of course, when they're here. And that was the feedback we got from everyone was, you know, these guys are very approachable and they taught us a lot of things and things like that. So, so again, that was really cool. And I think, really, like, I think, you know, next year, again, we want to grow, because really, I suppose that the overall goal is we really want to make Ireland a hub for Agile. Like, when people talk about Agile and Lean, we want them to think of Ireland, like, you know, that's the place to go. So, you know, that's ultimately I suppose our overall mission is, yeah.
How do you see, so what is DevOps within Agile and Lean?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah. And like, I think DevOps is a culture, right? Like, cause it's funny. Like, I heard someone saying, "Oh, we'll hire DevOps. We'll hire some DevOps onto the team."
Irritating.
We'll hire some, like, I think you mean like an operations person who can, like, you know,
write scripts,
and then hopefully we'll eventually get to a DevOps culture.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I kind of see DevOps as an extension of Agile, and I kind of see, like, things like automation and stuff like that, and some of the things from like extreme programming, I think are kind of linked. Like, I kind of see DevOps as a bit of a kind of ancestor to XP a little bit. So I would say they work hand in hand, basically. You know, Scrum teams should be using DevOps practices without a doubt. They should be doing continuous delivery, and
it's very hard to do all that testing if you don't have continuous delivery.
Yeah, 100%. Like, so, and things like Kanban and things like that really fit in well with, you know, with DevOps, you know, really thinking in terms of continuous delivery. And
you're probably doing some portion of it, and probably poorly if you're not trying to at least figure out which bits work for you and which bits don't. Yeah,
exactly. So, like, I'm still learning more about DevOps. Like, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be an expert at all on DevOps, but like, I work with people who are, and you know, I think we're trying to get to that culture. Like, we're not there yet, but we're definitely trying to get to that culture with some of the teams I work with, because ultimately I think, like, our holy grail is to have continuous deployments, like delivering multiple times a day based off feedback and, you know, real-time analysis and things like that. So, you know, we're not there yet, but we're definitely putting steps in place to do that. So yeah, like, very much complementary. Like, I don't think there's I think like an Agile events and Agile conferences and things like that, it's definitely something we're trying to promote more of, is developers and DevOps. Like, we're going to have a DevOps track at Ali this year as well. So
I definitely suggest doing at least like some lightning talks and some of the dev meetups, because I mean, just a lot of us devs are very introverted. Not all, but a lot of us are. And so we know where we're going, and you know, we love meetups, or at least the ones of us that go to meetups do. And you know, don't go looking for things that don't seem like they apply to us, right? I mean, that's a generalization, and it doesn't apply to everybody. It's some sort of Venn diagram, right? But if you're in front of them and explain how that fits, how it makes their lives better, and why they should care, you know, there's been kind of a Agile has a little bit of a connotation with the agile transformation of large organizations. And so some people may begin to get the feeling that DevOps is after Agile. Not that one is kind of, there's different groups of tools that belong together. And whether you use them or not is going to determine how well you move forward with either one.
100%. Like, I always find it interesting. I think, like, Agile came from, you know, 17 software developers,
exactly,
right? So
exactly.
not kind of management consultants or things like that.
Yes.
And you know, I think somehow over the years, I think the meaning of Agile has been lost in many respects, and being commoditized, unfortunately, and it's become a kind of more focused on management and practices and project management and things like that. And you know, I think a lot of the devs, you know, I work with, that's kind of what they associate it with. So even the word Agile, unfortunately, has become a little bit loaded, I think. Like I was at a conference in Poland recently where I think they asked everyone put their hands up, who were the developers in the room. From 500 people, I think there was 15 people that put their hands up. But then for all the coaches in the room, who were maybe 350 people, they asked them to put their hands up if they've ever been to a development conference. And I think 3 people had put their hands up. So it's kind of like, probably a bit of empathy maybe needed there as well. You know, have you ever been to a React meetup even? Have you ever been to a TypeScript meetup or whatever? So there's probably a little bit of, you know, I think there could be more empathy between communities there. But yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of, you know, I don't think it's like do the transformation and then, you know, install DevOps, or, you know, really doesn't work like that. It's kind of, they should be very much aligned, I think, with each other. So, but I think that's a really good tip. It's kind of, you know, how can things like maybe Kanban help developers? What's in it for them? How can it help solve their problems if they're using some of these practices? So,
now, one thing that I don't hear of much, and I'm not 100% sure how it works, but with talking about the outcome-based roadmap and Kanban type things.
Yeah.
How do you see that fitting in with marketing? So if marketing needs to begin the sales process of something,
right?
A good, you know, if you're talking about a 60 or 90 day lead time between initial contact and completion of the sale, then I cannot tell you what will be developed in 60 to 90 days.
Right.
I mean, everything you do as a creator of software is create something that's never been created in a specific way that's never been done before.
Right.
Like there are tons of elements that have been done before a million times, but this puzzle has never been put together in this particular way. So you never know when you're going to have to pull out the jigsaw and trim a piece. And then you find out, oh, well, the cord is frayed. So now I have to go to the hardware store. And on the way to the hardware store, the tire falls off of your car. And so you're taking the tire to the mechanic, and then you get run over by a bus, and then you're at the hospital. That's what it feels like sometimes. So, how do you have any ideas? And I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer, because we're all trying to solve these problems.
No, I think it's a really good question. I don't think I have a really good answer, to be honest, for that. Like I just think of even some products like Christmas doesn't move, right? We know Christmas is like going to happen next year. So, you know, we should have something in the roadmap for Christmas for next year, and we should probably have some sort of a marketing plan for that. But you know, maybe we don't have to go into the exact details of what the features we're going to release at Christmas are. Maybe we're going to focus on having an outcome of increasing adoption over Christmas, and you know, we're going to have a direction into which we're going. But look, I suppose like there is a reality as well there. Some things do have a fixed date, and sometimes you do have to deliver something earlier for marketing campaigns and things like that. So yeah, like I think, I don't have a great answer for that.
Sure, no, I don't.
Yeah,
maybe
I'll learn. Maybe I'll go to a meetup and someone had the answer to that.
I hope somebody puts on a call for paper. Or,
there you go.
Puts in a paper for
exactly.
I figured it out.
Put within. There's about 9 days left for a call for paper. So if you've got an answer to that, I'd like to hear that.
Please do.
Depends when this goes out, of course.
That'd be the most attended session in the history.
Yeah,
All
good
right,
question,
cool.
though.
Is there anything that you want to mention that we haven't talked about so far?
No, I don't think so. Like,
You can always come back. You're
yeah,
welcome back
I
anytime.
I really appreciate you having me on. I think appreciate the mentions of Agile Lean Ireland as well. So I'd say, yeah, you know, if you're just curious about Agile or Lean, or some of these practices, and you'd like to learn more, you can find out more at agileleanireland.org. We have Dan North, who's well known in the development community as well. Barry O'Reilly, who's well known in the startup community. So, you know, whatever the hat you wear every day is, there's likely going to be someone very interesting there for you to hear from. John Cutler from the product management community. So there's lots of good speakers there for you to network with, there'll be job opportunities, things like that. And come to our meetups as well. Like, really, the meetups are really our heartbeat every month or every 2 months. And we'll have more meetups coming up. So, so just find out more there.
Great. And I'd say, you know, worst case, you'll develop a little more empathy for the people you work with. I mean, so even if you don't find somebody in your specific area, which is going to make it easier to work with them. It's always a win.
Yeah. Cool.
So is there anywhere else that people could contact you?
So you can find me on Twitter on Cobra Kai Agile. Which I'm a big Karate Kid fan, and I was pretty delighted to see the Cobra Kai series. Yeah, my Twitter account was many years before this got released, so it was awesome. Actually, I would definitely recommend watching it on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
It's a really cool series. So Cobra Kai Agile. You can get me on Twitter.
I'll stick all the links in the show notes. So. Thank you so much for joining us, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Cool.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, remember, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.